What's up, guys? Welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Ordell, and something that I've noticed is that the Hippopotamus Defense is almost exclusively played with the black pieces. The move order can vary quite a bit, but we're going to try to get that set up, in which case we fianchetto both of our bishops. We're going to put our central pawns on e6 and d6, tucking those knights right behind, and then putting our rook pawns on either a6, h6, or both. But guys, the same thing can be done but with the white pieces, and that's exactly what we're going to see in a very nice game played by international master Gerald Welling back in 1991. Now here we see him start off with the move g3, and now against d5, bishop g2, the king's fianchetto opening. We see this continued by d3, knight d2, and after the move e5, black just trying to take full control of the center. This move e3, and following bishop c5, we see knight e2, and here following the move knight bd7, the traditional move order is simply playing b3 and then bishop b2, and then eventually a3 and maybe even b4. But guys, why not play this move a3 right now if we have the opportunity to play b4 and then bishop b2, gaining a tempo, gaining some space on the queen side? Why not do it? We see black stop this by playing a5, so obviously b4 is no longer an option because black would simply capture back, and if we capture that pawn back, we're going to have to say goodbye to our rook on a1. But guys, here we now see the move b3, a small little move order change, but sometimes that can be nice. If you see a move like bishop c5, maybe start off with a3 and see if your opponent plays the move a5. If not, play b4, and the same thing can be done on the other side of the board. Just a little tip that can give you guys a little bit of an extra edge in those games. We now see black play b5, expanding on the queen side, and now from white, bishop b2, and following bishop b7, castling kingside from both sides. And now we see white continue with h3. So we have reached our primary setup. And again, this may seem like a very passive opening if you haven't seen it before, but there's really three main ideas in which you can try to slowly expand your position. And that's exactly what we're going to see in today's video. Here we see the move rook e8. And y'all, the first way that you could start to try to make some progress and put some pressure on your opponent is expanding in the center with one of your central pawns, either playing e4 or d4. In this situation, I don't really see the rush for either of these two. Most of the time, it's the opponent that really tries to break through in one of these squares, and against that, you then have the opportunity to take the pawn or to push the pawn. The second way that you can do it is pushing one of your flank pawns, one of your pawns on c2 or f2, to either c4 or f4. Now, first off, this move c4 right now isn't bad, but from a practical standpoint, black just has so much pressure on it. I feel like black is the one that benefits there, and obviously by black putting the bishop on c5, f4 does not work because the pawn on e3 falls. But there's a third option, and that is either playing this move b4 or g4 and then tucking your knight right behind. Now guys, obviously in this position, b4 is simply stopped because black has two attacking pieces on that square, but we can play this move g4 followed by knight g3, and that's exactly what we see in this game, and the purpose of it is two-sided. Now here we're looking to play g5, which by the way would trap the knight. If black plays something like rook d8, we push this pawn up one square, and all of a sudden black only has two legal moves with this knight, and both of which simply lose a piece. On top of the possibility of playing g5, making space, and on top of that trapping this knight, is that by playing knight g3, we have a very nice spot on f5, attacking that queen. So we're actually going to see this later on in the game. We see h6 at the moment, which prevents g5, trapping the knight, and now from white, expanding in the center with d4. Attacking this bishop on c5, and following bishop b6, we now see white start to trade off, taking that central pawn, and then playing knight f3. Again, it seems like a passive opening, but all of a sudden, white is putting quite a bit of pressure on black center, and in the game we see the move bishop c7, which I think is a solid option. But guys, what happens if black just takes the knight on f3? Well, in this case, we're going to take back with the queen, and all of a sudden, we got a bishop on b2 that has become alive, attacking that knight on f6, our queen as well. We're really threatening to just take the knight on f6 and a lot of variations and give black double isolated pawns. And on top of that, we're also looking to play knight f5, attacking the queen. If black doesn't like all the pressure that we're putting on this knight, they can bring the knight back, but then we're going to play knight f5, attacking the queen and picking this pawn off on g7 one move later. This game is nearly over. So y'all, black was very careful here against Welling not to really allow this bishop to become more alive. than it already is. So we see the move bishop c7, and now from white, that key idea, knight f5. Remember that, guys, in your own games with the hippo defense or the hippo attack. If you're playing white and you have a knight on e2, you can always play g4, knight g3, eyeing that key f5 square. Here from black, we see queen d8, bringing that queen back one square. And here white sees a positional opportunity and starts to trade down. What do I mean? Well, here we see a take on e5, not once, but twice from white, and now queen d4. And notice what white has done here. Notice the activity of white's pieces opposed to the activity of black's, specifically the bishops on b7 and g2. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say this is the best bishop on g2 I've ever seen, but it's definitely a lot better than the bishop on b7. And on top of that, our queen is very active. And I mean, obviously, this knight on f5 is attacking a ton of key dark squares. Here we see black play the move queen c7, defending the rook on e5. And here from white, we see the move b4, expanding on the queen side and really taking a grip of that key c5 square. By taking away the c5 square, this pawn on c6 cannot move. And if this pawn can't move, this bishop is extremely inactive on b7. This is the game of chess. It's very cumulative, meaning that one piece affects the other much of the time. And here in the game, we actually see this move knight e8, which at first sight may seem very confusing. I mean, why on earth is black going backwards? It seems as if it is for no reason. But guys, notice here, black would like to play a move like bishop c8, and according to the engine, this is the best move, trying to give up a bad piece for this very strong piece on f5. But black was probably concerned about this idea of knight takes g7. Whole idea being if this king takes back, we can now play f4, kicking this rook around. And here, if a move like rook e6, we're now going to continue with g5. This knight is pinned. Obviously, if black takes on g5 with the pawn, we're simply going to take back with the f pawn with even more pressure on that knight. And guys, if black plays this position perfectly and they navigate all these lines and variations, they're going to be okay, but it's extremely difficult. And I would much rather have white in this position simply because if black makes one simple error, this game could be over very quickly. So guys, I just showed you potentially why black didn't want to play this move bishop c8 because of knight takes g7. But some of you may be wondering, okay, wait, why didn't white just play knight takes g7 right away? Why did we even play the move b4 if black is so worried about it? Well, let's take a step back. Let's just assess this position before the move b4. Now, if we do play knight takes g7 right now, there is a very key difference, and that is that c5 is available. In fact, right now, black can play c5 right away. Obviously, if we bring our queen to somewhere like d3 or d2, we're simply going to lose a knight, and there's going to be no hope of having any kind of pin against that king. So here is white. We really only have two options. One of them is playing c3, and the other is b2. Let's first take a look at queen c3. Well, in this case, black captures back. Why doesn't this move f4 work? We're attacking the rook. We're trying to hold on to that pawn. Now black is able to play d4, expanding in the center of the board. Obviously, if we play a move like queen b2 or queen d2, etc., this knight is not going to get pinned anytime soon. And if we take on d4, black's simply able to play a move like rook e2, currently attacking this bishop. And again, there's just no way white's going to have enough time to pin this knight to the king on g7. So queen c3 doesn't work because that c5 move is allowed and d4 is on the way. What about this move queen b2? Well, in this case, black's simply going to capture back the knight, and against f4, black is able to take on e3. And now against g5, sure, we have got the pin on that knight on f6, but then yet again, black's able to continue with d4, cutting off the pin, and we can win the knight on f6, but now black can even play a move like taking the pawn back. I personally would rather play a move like king h8. It seems as if the king is a lot safer here. We have rook g8 on the way, attacking this bishop, which, by the way, already has a ton of pressure on it. This rook on e3 is extremely active. The queen eyeing the square of f4, and guys, it might be time for white to throw in the towel here. So guys, I know I just spent quite a bit of time really comparing the position between the pawn on b3 and the pawn on b4 and how much of a difference it makes. But guys, this is what chess is made up of. You see a move in a game like this, like knight takes g7, and then you start assessing, okay, what could black do to try to kick my queen off? Well, the answer is just c5, eventually d4 after that. So why not try to stop this move c5 for two reasons. First off, by playing b4, we are now eyeing knight takes g7 ideas because c5 simply does not have the same sting that it did. And on top of that, it gives us the key square for the rest of the game. We see this move knight e8, black trying to defend the pawn on g7. Notice how if we take on g7, king takes g7 is not going to be played because this rook would be pinned. But now if we take on g7, the knight simply captures back, and we just lost a piece for a pawn. So we see this move f4, attacking the rook. This rook drops back one square, and now white playing h4. Remember, guys, just a second ago, the hippo seemed like a very quiet, very slow opening, but now we're slowly starting to expand and improve the positioning of our pieces with a ton of space on the king side of the board. And it's really hard for black to kick our pieces around. I mean, even this move g6 doesn't work at the moment because we simply win that pawn on h6, forcing that king to f8, and white's going to have a very nice game there. So here we see the move f6 from black, trying to limit the activity of our queen on d4 and really just try to give black a solid setup here. But we now play this move queen c5, taking control of that square. In fact, this is called a hole in chess. A hole in chess is basically a square that your opponent's pawns cannot attack for the rest of the game, guys. I don't care how hard both sides try to get one of black's pawns to eventually attack this square of c5. It is simply impossible. So the only piece that can really kick this queen out is another piece. It could be the queen, a minor piece, or a major piece, but none of the pawns are making this queen go anywhere anytime soon. And on top of that, this queen is attacking some very key squares, and it's hard for black to contend with. I mean, this b6 square is taken away, and the d6 and e7 squares are currently taken away by our knight. And again, the positioning of our knight is also very solid because g6 simply runs into knight takes h6 with check. We now see this move queen d7. Some of you may be wondering, okay, wait, why did black play this move? Well, let's go one move back. Let's say black plays this move knight d6. This seems like a very good option. I would much rather give up my knight on e8 and in return get that knight on f5. But now we simply have bishop takes d5, and c takes d5 cannot be played because there's no longer a knight defending that queen. So black here is going to have to play something like rook e8. But guys, we could just take this rook and have a bunch of material, but we're going to have this rook pinned for quite a while. So why not try to get more material out of it? Play knight takes d6. Whole idea being this rook can't take the knight because it's currently in the pin. This pawn can't take the bishop because it is in a pin as well. And if the queen takes the knight, we take back. And yet again, this rook is in a pin, a ton of pins, and a ton of material going white's way. So y'all, black really dodged a bullet here by not playing knight d6, but instead playing the move queen d7. And against this, we now see from white the move a4. I mean, white here just trying to put as much pressure on the black camp as they possibly can. And we now see this move bishop a6 from black, trying to defend b5, and also indirectly eye this rook on f1. So here we see white go, okay, I don't want my rook to be indirectly attacked like this. I don't want to have to think about moves like b takes a4 with tempo attacking my rook. So I'm just going to bring my rook to the open file and aim it towards the opponent's queen. Guys, in chess, it never hurts to point your rook towards the opponent's king or queen just in case things break open. We now see queen a7 from black trying to trade down. And now from white, this move knight d4, solid square. I mean, just talk about dark square domination in this game, attacking the rook on e6. We see this move rook takes e3 from black, and now white continuing with a takes b5. We see the move bishop b7 in the game, but really no matter what black plays here, white's going to have a one position. For example, if black takes on b5 with the bishop, in this case, okay, we just take back with the knight. And following both of these queens falling off, it seems as if black can simply get this piece back. I mean, right now we are up a piece for a pawn, but if black takes this knight, they're up a pawn, but only for a moment because if bishop takes d5, attacking the king, and the very next move, we simply win a rook. This game is nearly over. So y'all, if a move like bishop takes b5 from black, in that case, okay, let's just take that bishop back. And guys, this c-pawn is never going to be able to take that knight unless they want to drop the pawn on d5. And this is the kind of game that we want to get out of the hippo opening. At the beginning, we're playing very slow and methodical, but after that, we're going to pick our moments and try to find weaknesses in the opponent's positions while limiting ours. Here we see the move bishop b7, and now white simply takes that queen off the board, takes on c6, forcing this bishop back, and we now see from white b5, and here black just resigns the game because there's really no way to stop the move b6, in which case we're going to have two passed pawns on the 6th rank, and there's really no way that black can defend this pawn on d5. I mean, I guess black could play a move like knight c7, but against that, b6, forking both this rook and the knight. And this game simply winning. Very nice game by international master Gerald Welling. Thanks for watching today's video. If you'd like to learn the theory behind the Hippopotamus Defense, click that video to the left. If you'd like to see Simon Williams use this opening to get a very good win, click that video to the right. Leave a comment down below to let me know what other videos you'd like to see covered on this channel. And as always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.